You are watching
You have
Xirtus.
Moses in the 13th century BC, right around Akhenaten. Similarly, in the 13th century BC, maybe within a few generations at most, if not identically timed at each other. And what is the story of Moses and what is the story of Akhenaten? Well, it's some sort of a baby myth about a special baby that's become part of this kingdom, maybe coming from Yuya is the Joseph translation. There's an administrator who ran Egypt a generation or two prior, so the grandfather of Akhenaten, who brings the Hyksos family into Egypt. They create a new religion, Atenism, where they believe in the Son of God, referring to the Sol Invictus star, that the star is the most important Son of God, and you should only worship my Son of God. And we're going to move the temple and the city from Cairo to Amarna and build a new city. So they wander in the desert for 40 years. Amarna exists for about 40 years, right? The city of Aten for Akhenaten. And then afterwards, he's punished by his brother and removed from power. And they basically destroy all of their records about this period in history, while the Jewish tribe starts to become famous under Josephus' stories later. Right. So there's
Right.
definitely kind of that is tied into everything. I bring it up because if we're talking about the pharaohs, we're also talking about our perspective of religion generations later, and Christianity, Islam, Judaism, they're all talking about the Abrahamic God, which is, coming from this point in this perspective of how you're supposed to worship, what you think a God is, because that's the other thing. A lot of people that talk about, a lot of these Christians or people who believe these kind of ideas about God are from not the Middle East, but like Nordic countries or European Slavic countries that had little gods that they believed in, these weird polytheistic gods that ran around and threw lightning from the clouds, and that affects more than anything our perspective on what is spiritual or celestial or supernatural, or how material these things are.
Um, I I was thinking about this Mongolian god that would like shit on people or like get all the women in the village pregnant and then go to the next village, and he was just a myth about this guy who probably was a real guy, but then they deified him in this
Sounds like
tribe.
Genghis Khan or something. Yeah,
It was crazy, like the amount of gods like that show up. I heard that that the Jews in the beginning were polytheistic, and then the Babylonians, I think it was Cyrus the Great of the Persian Empire, was it? I don't know. They encouraged a tribe of Jews to look at this old Zoroastrianism concept of good and evil, of the God of duality. And so the Jews took it on and integrated it into their culture. And then that became the monotheistic Jewish tribe that then became the predominant form of Judaism.
Yeah, Babylonian Talmud, but there's more, because I would say the Jews still are polytheistic, whether they recognize themselves as that as not, or atheists. Because if you believe in God and it's Abrahamic God, then you believe in the have no other gods before me. And there's a number of gods that they interact with. Moloch, for instance, in the Bible, several times it's not. There's no question there are other gods, but they're Heno, is that right? Henotheistic, where they believe that there's one God above the other gods,
above the others, yeah, and
or at
that
least
God
that
is
for them.
not definable. Whereas all the other ones, you can kind of like you can give some relative form to. So there's the idea when Moses sees the burning bush and it says, "Who should I say hath sent me?" And the burning bush is like, "Tell them I am that I am has sent you." Like even if you look at Ehye, like the way the even the four letters of that, like it's like a play on Tetragrammaton itself. So it's like he's going back and he's saying, I am that I am, which is transcendent of all these other, representations, right? So like
It's also
God can't be represented, right? That's the
it's
idea.
like it's the reverberation. I am what I am that I am is like a rever. It's like if you point a video camera into the TV that is the monitor, you see all those
Exactly.
frames. It's like I am that I am that I am that I am, and you're like, what? That's the response of what, like, it's this.
Which is the other thing besides Om, right? In Sanskrit, Hamsa, Sa'am, like I am that I am, it's the mantra that's done to kind of break yourself away into samadhi, right? It's
Right. Well, in with that, yeah, exactly, would be what is it? Neti neti, which is not this in Sanskrit, which is like the key to liberation in the different levels of samadhi, is basically in one form or another repeating that I'm not this. So whatever comes up, which is kind of relatable to the 42 principles you were talking about last week, Andreas, with ma'at, where you say I have not, and not just like thou shalt not, but like that disidentification process to liberate the soul. I mean, when you're talking about Moses, like being like the child sent down the river and then ending up, raised in Egypt, like as this, like that archetypal story it's not dissimilar from the story, like what would happen later in the New Testament with Jesus and Herod, right? Where they're killing the firstborn, and then they go and the child is hidden away. It also reminds me of like one of those Greek tragedies. It's just this reoccurring thematic thing where you have the liberator is like hidden and then like grows up in the midst of this dominating kind of culture and ends up like taking it over. It's like the Saturn Jupiter story as well.
It's Aladdin also.
Totally like Aladdin. Yeah, that was something we were talking about recently with Thomas about the golden bough. You can see indications of the ritualistic killing of the king encoded into Aladdin. And Crowley talked about that in his chapter on the Fool in the Book of Thoth, about how and he particularly names Aladdin, but he says a lot of these different mythos incorporate these particular components that we see in the golden bough ritual.
What is the golden bough ritual?
It's the ritualistic killing of the king, where it was a way to kind of prune back the tree, so to speak, of an empire. So they had this idea that if left unchecked, if like you keep it in the family, so to speak, like the royal system, if it only stays in the family, you end up with inbreeding, and the health of the king is thought to be connected directly to a representative of the health of the kingdom. And so they would introduce new blood into the royal system as an action of humility that was meant to align ourselves with these natural processes that we witnessed in, it's redundant, but in nature.
But so, they instead of getting the king to step down, is it just because they would have a hard time getting the king to abdicate?
So they would do it different ways depending, and this is something that happened in China and different parts of the world. But the idea is sometimes it would be won by conquest unwillingly. So like the king would actually have be challenged by this outsider, and he would have to meet certain credentials. And so he would either kill the king by force, or the king would actually sometimes kill himself. And so this is where the symbolism of the suicide king comes from. In certain cases, he would actually stab himself in front of the, in front of a large group of people, and they would just like watch him die. And that was like, that was considered like a dignified way to handle the situation, because he's supposed to know going into it that it will end this way, that this is part of like, you get this, but you also get this.
And like an honorable king that's gonna lose, and it's obvious he's gonna lose, and all his people are gonna die, if he steps out and is like, take me, that's all you want is the kingdom, let my people live, and he sacrifices himself, that's understandable. Like I could understand that honor, and it's like the captain going down the ship, but like it literally could preserve them from invading the kingdom and taking everything and destroying everyone. If the king's like, I don't want it, I'm not going to abdicate so that you have to be afraid I'm coming back with an army, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to say the rest, but
right. So just, the reason why it's called the Golden Bough, this is a book from Cambridge from this guy Fraser, who had gone around, he traveled around the world actually to look at this phenomenon and how it reoccurred in with different ancient cultures. And this is an anthropological work, pre-Margaret Mead, so it's like a staple anthropological book. And so
what's that?
No, go ahead.
Where was it in Aladdin? You mentioned Aladdin, but where was the philosophy?
Certain components of Aladdin that you have the outsider. It's also like this idea of the last becoming first.
So the father's becoming weaker, and there's a choice between the Jafar, who's a Buddhist, right? Isn't he kind of a Manichaean Buddhist?
Oh, they're going to blood outside the bloodline. I see, because he has.
And then they have to bring in and you bring in the prince of the pauper, and the pauper is the
Got it.